sunshine. Welcome to Conversations with Celena, the podcast where we discover inspiration, motivation, and information to help you live your best life. I'm your host, Celena, aka Sunshine, and each week we'll dive into conversations with guests who share their testimonies, insights, and advice. We'll explore topics that uplift, encourage, and empower you to be the best version of yourself you can be. So tune in and let's have some fun while we explore all that life has to offer. Keep it smiling, sunshine, and let's go. Sunshine, hey, welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Celena. I'm your smiling host, Sunshine, and I'm so excited to be back on today. It is April the 4th, 2026. And if you all know me, y'all know what? It's my birthday month. It's my birthday month. So I'm so excited about that. And then also it is Conversations with Celena 6-year anniversary. It's our 6-year anniversary. And we're going to be celebrating April the 25th in New Orleans, Louisiana at 11 o'clock a.m. So if you're interested in joining Sunshine to have a light lunch and a mini session of I Owe Her, the Woman in the Mirror, please go to selenathomas.net and join. If you would like to be a sponsor, or if you would like to, what else we got going on? Provide a scholarship for someone or get a restoration bag for a guest. Go to selenathomas.net and also say that's what you want to do. And we will be so happy and so blessed to have you be a part of 6 years of Conversation with Celena. So cheers to 6 years, sunshine. Let me go give myself a hand clap of praise. Hold on a second. Let me find it. Y'all hold on. Hang tight. Oh, y'all, we got to have fun and we got to laugh. We got to smile. There's a whole lot of going on. So y'all be patient with Sunshine. Y'all know I got to do a little extra because it wouldn't be me if I did not. So today we have 2 episodes. So 11 and 7, 11 a.m. Central. And then again tonight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be live once again. All right. So set your calendar so you don't miss me. You don't want to miss Sunshine. But for today at our 11 a.m., hang tight with me just a moment. Okay. So for our 11 a.m., I'm so excited to bring to the stage our next guest. His name is Chuck Richardson, and he has a new book. Okay, y'all know we love authors over here because they got a lot to say. But yeah, so he had a debut novel, was True Status in 2023. And that was a 2024 Next Generation Indie Book Award finalist. Chuck believes the most important thing for everyone to learn is what God thinks about them. I'm all ears this morning, Mr. Chuck. I'm all ears. His writing explores questions about sin, redemption, and sanctification, and the battle between good and evil. Chuck's second novel, which we really going to be talking about today, Paradise Unfallen, imagines a world where the first parents did not sin. Because we blame everything on them, don't we? We blame everything. Cannot wait. Chuck is a native of Rome, New York, and he currently lives in Louisville, Kentucky with his wife, Miss Ruby. He earned a BS in mechanical engineering and a Master of Education. So listen, we cannot wait to meet Mr. Chuck. So y'all help me welcome to the stage, Mr. Chuck Richardson. Woo! You get a double round of applause, Mr. Chuck.
All right. I feel special.
Good.
Thank you, Celena, for having me on your show.
Sunshine.
And Sunshine, congratulations on 6 years. That's
Thank
great.
you. Yes, sir. You know, and many times you want to just kind of throw in the towel. And most of the people in the front don't see that. It's the people on the back end that hear you whining and crying about,
Yeah.
keep doing this or not. And they be like, girl, if you
Straighten
don't,
up. Keep going.
keep going, you know. But yes. And then, you really want to show your kids and other people that despite the adversity, you do keep pushing forward. You do still keep getting up, even when it gets hard, because it's going to get hard. So there's no need for you to fake the funk and tell people, oh, it's easy breezy, because you're setting them up for failure. But it's important for us to let people know our testimony, our trials and tribulations, but also our triumphs, because we've come through a lot. So I'm excited to hear about your testimony and how you became an author.
All right.
Yes. So I guess we'll start there. If you want to add to your bio, you're most welcome to do that. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think that you did great with that. I just think that for me, it's been a journey of really trying to understand God and what He is doing. As a young adult coming out of high school into college, I really didn't understand Christianity. And that was one of the things I was searching for. And it really took, when I was in my first job, I was raised a Methodist, but I really didn't understand why Christ died. But when on my first job, I met a man who was just so devoted to Christ that he set me on fire and encouraged me to read. And I gradually learned a lot more and had an experience. And that's part of what's in the first book, was just reading the book of Romans in the Bible. And that really enlightened me and showed me really what Christianity is all about. From there, I learned, went to another city, learned more, really understood the importance of baptism, was baptized at age 24. And ultimately, I really am motivated to teach and try to share Christ with people. And so I've always loved writing, but I found that I really like writing these novels, because I used to be really basically a nonfiction writer and had never imagined writing a novel. But I'm glad I did. And it's really been a great learning experience.
So I have a question. So your first experience with church, you say you grew up Methodist, right?
Yes.
So did you find yourself in church often and you just didn't understand what was happening? Because I know sometimes we're forced into it, and you're right. Like we don't have that personal relationship. We just have the act of going to the church, going through the motions on Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday night, Thursday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, like all 7 days of the week. But it does take us, I feel like most of us, a little bit of time to get older and build that relationship and understand how you need Christ in your life, why you need Christ in your life. So what was it like in the very beginning?
I think for me, my parents were regular attenders, like I'm usually just once a week in that environment. But as we got to be teenagers, it wasn't as much emphasis on going all the time. So I didn't learn what the Bible was all about. So as I got older, like I mentioned, actually when I was in college, I wanted to learn. I wanted to know. I knew there was something I was missing compared with some other people. And I took Bible as literature classes. I took 2 of those in college. But ultimately, those were just participants. The teachers it was like literature. It was like English. It wasn't a spiritual thing. So it wasn't until I got onto my first job that I met a man who I thought was out of his mind because he was so devoted to God. And I remember describing him as a guy who was always playing Christmas music. And, we had cubicles, and he had his little cubicle, and he had his music turned down low, but he was really, it was in a manufacturing operation, and he was, working in that as a support person like I was, but he was also studying to be a preacher. And just seeing his faith encouraged me and caused me to start reading. And what's so interesting is that I would read the Bible on lunch hour. We would play ping pong, but I ended up started reading the Bible on my lunch hour and reading the Old Testament. And I had not really done that before. And I realized that this is just like a movie. I mean, all the things that happen in the Old Testament are like an exciting, violent at times, just like a movie. And so I was intrigued, and I was just drawn into what the scripture was saying about all the difficulties the different characters and different people were having. Of course, this is real. These things happened. So I began to just read the Bible. And like I mentioned, when I read the book of Romans, that, the Apostle Paul really unfolds why Christ died, why we need, how God views humanity. Like in chapter 1, it basically spells out that everybody is totally messed up and we're all under the condemnation of God. And the book of Romans explains how Christ came and how, looking back at the Old Testament, we can see how God made a promise to Abraham that all the world would be blessed through him. And ultimately, he was pointing to Christ. So those are things that I didn't really have a good grip on before. And I really came to understand that. And what I also learned, I moved to another city and continued to learn because that was one of my main things, to find a place where I could learn the Bible. And I just learned, and in all of this, I see the working of God, and that he was bringing me the people and the information that I needed to understand what he wanted us to do. And so it was there that I continued studying and met with the associate minister, really learned the importance of baptism. It was a whole story related with that, but I was baptized at 24. And, that's when I also began teaching. I actually taught young people, like 4th or 5th graders, right after I got baptized. So it was, and I found that, as you mentioned, I have a degree in mechanical engineering, but what I really love is education and to be a teacher. But, and as I said, I was a freelance. I love writing so much, and I always did. In the 80s and 90s, I was doing some freelance writing while I worked at General Electric here in Louisville. And so I did work for a community, like a Black newspaper, and then also a business newspaper. And I edited different, like the Friends of the Library newsletter. So I was trying to do things that I could write. But all my writing was nonfiction, which I never, I always thought that's the type of writer I would be. But after a while, I decided to set that aside and just work on my career, which included doing some consulting and training for a number of years. But ultimately, I came back to writing, and I was doing, like I had mentioned to you earlier before we came on, about curriculum development and technical writing. But what's so interesting is once I decided to write a novel, and that was really through the encouragement of our youngest daughter. She was taking a creative writing class. So I decided to try to write a short story. And I wrote it like a chapter. And I wrote a short story, and she asked me what happens next. So that started me on about a 3-year journey to begin writing and drafting a complete novel. But what's so interesting about that is it took me 3 years to realize I didn't know how to do that. And I ended up taking another 1.5 years to rewrite it and figure out how to tell a good story and not teach a lesson.
Well, that's awesome. Like we were talking before before we went live, is teaching and educating is something that I also would love to do, but I don't feel like I specialize in anything. And so sometimes it is the younger people that get us kind of motivated with just a question. That's funny. Your daughter's like, well, what happens next? And that just got your you know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's all it takes. And so that's awesome that you were able to do that in your professional life and your passion portion of your life. And maybe I'll get there one day.
Yeah, it's really like finding out what you really like and
That's
then you're
what
going
you
to put a
said.
lot of time into it. And one of the things I found is, like I mentioned, that I worked on my book for 3 years roughly, and then I showed it to some professional people in the publishing industry, and they gave me some really nice feedback, but it was really hard to hear because I didn't write a good story. I wrote something that was more like, they called it didactic and things like that, which means teaching. So it's like you're teaching a lesson. One even accused me, this sounds like a Bible tract. And so, but what that did is it let me know I need to write a story. I don't need to write a lesson.
Yeah.
That's really a lot of my career. As I mentioned to you, I used to do quality management consulting. I used to teach classes. That's what I did. So my first, attempt at the novel was too much like a lesson and not a good story. And what I found out is, because I actually did a lot of research, I went to websites, I bought books. That's one thing I would say. If any of your listeners or viewers want to write, there is a ton of information out there on how to do that, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, that's low cost. There's people, writing experts, give a lot of information away. And there was one website by a woman named K.M. Whalen, and it's called Helping Writers Become Authors. And she had like a series of like over 70 posts about writing novel fiction structure and story structure. I went through all of that. And then there's a bunch of other people that I went to their websites and read their books. So after I learned that my book was not a good story, I learned all these things and I rewrote that book. I threw out like 40% of the original manuscript, and I recreated and added new material that was even more than what I cut out. So it ended up being a longer book, which was better, and it became a better story. And what I realized is how much I enjoyed like rereading my book at that point than I did it. It was much better for me just to work on it after I understood how to write a novel. So I was really thankful, even though I was really disappointed, to hear the criticism of the book.
Isn't the criticism kind of hard sometimes, but it's so helpful at the same time?
Absolutely. And see, that's the thing as a writer, we have to be willing to take advice, but we still have to know what fits us, because you don't want to just change with something that you really value. So it's really a balancing act. You gotta, like with my books, the first book was published traditionally. I had a small publisher, and they provide an editor, and the editors know what they're doing usually, and 90% of the advice they give, you should take. But at the same time, there's times when they don't totally understand what you're trying to do.
You're trying to say, yeah,
right, and why you're doing it a certain way. And that's the same with other people. You want to get feedback from people who are not professionals, not in the publishing industry. They may say, I got confused here, or I didn't understand this, but they won't know exactly what's wrong. So you got to take those things to heart and figure out what you need to do to improve. But again, I think we need to take in this expert advice and really seriously consider if we need to make a change based on that advice. So it's a constant for me. I've written 2 novels now, but I'm still absolutely trying to learn more. And I think even if people have got 30 or 40 novels, they're always learning still. So when you're writing
fiction, life learners. We're life learners.
Yeah. It's like, and you would be surprised about how much there is to learn about writing and writing fiction in particular. Just like the second book, I learned a lot about point of view, like how you should convey what is happening in the story through the eyes of the point of view character for that scene. And there's a lot of advice out there, because that's actually trickier than it may sound, to do it so you don't confuse the readers, and you're doing it in a way that's logical. So that's something that I'm still learning. I don't do that naturally. I have to really think about it.
Right. Especially when you're having to, like you said, change characters and then keep it clear for the readers.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
my first novel was written in the first person, so I'm telling it through the eyes of the main character. So it was easy because what you don't want to do is you don't want to say things or present things that character wouldn't know. Like he can't read other people's minds, so you can't have that character just assume what somebody's thinking. You have to have somehow the other character is going to have to let them know. And in my second novel, I have multiple viewpoints. So it's written in, I attempted it what they call third person limited. So it's supposed to only present what is still like first person, but it's written in third person, but it's only what that point of view character would be aware of. And that's not easy because as a novelist, you know everything.
Say that one more time. So it's written in third person.
Right.
With a limited point of view of what
that person would. So you've got a point of view character, and like if you're in third person, you would say he saw this or he did this. But since you're using that particular character for your point of view, you wouldn't want to say, he saw what was happening behind him, because that character would not know that. Like you wouldn't write that somebody was sneaking up behind them or just came into the house unless that character has a way of knowing that. So, and it's a tricky thing to do. I mean, as a relatively new novelist, it's to me, and I think other people have that trouble too. It's hard to stay in the point of view for that scene because as a novelist, you know everything, and you have to try to make it so you're only dealing with that point of view character. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting is and my editor for the second book was really a huge help in helping me understand that. And what I found is since I was limiting the information that could be shared with the reader to that point of view character, it created suspense. I think like one of my characters was in a situation and she forgot something that she needed. So originally, I actually said that in the story. I said she forgot it. But if she forgot it, she didn't know that she didn't have it. It happened without her being aware of it. So when I revised it, I took that out. So then the reader is left, I think, wondering, does she have it? Where is it? So later on, when she needs that item, it's kind of a suspenseful thing, I think. So it adds, I think, to the reader's experience. At least that's the way it seemed to me when I took it out. Mm-hmm. I really was glad that I did that. So there's there's just so many other things about writing and fiction to learn and to kind of make habits.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot that you have to keep track of. But once you get rocking and rolling, like you're on which book now? Your third book?
I am working on my third book, and I just published my second. My second book is releasing next Wednesday on April 8th.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on, let me move myself. Put it back up.
It's reversed on my screen, but it's Paradise Unfallen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my second book.
So tell us about that one.
Well, Paradise Unfallen is the story that you mentioned where the first people on this planet did not sin.
Yes.
So it's based on the idea of Adam and Eve. What if Adam and we look at the world we're in right now, and it's such a disaster, and it seems like things are getting worse. So what I was trying to do is create a twin Earth called Aramea, and on this planet, we see it's really like a retelling of Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3 to start with. Mm-hmm. And if you ever look at Genesis 1, this is before the fall, before they sinned. God told the man and the woman to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every living thing that moves on the earth. So that is really the setup for the book, that these people, who my characters are named Solus, the man, and Livy, Livi, Livy, his wife, are commanded just like Adam and Eve were. So it's really saying Aramea is a twin earth. These people have to fill the planet. They have to be fruitful and multiply, which means they have to have children. They have to raise children, and they have to develop the garden. Instead of Garden of Eden, in my story, it's the Garden of Chara. So they are required to develop this. And sometimes people think that would have been easy, that before they sinned, there would have been no problems, no challenges. But what I'm trying to depict and show
that's how I feel.
It's like, if you're married, you're going to have challenges, no matter how much you love the person, you're two different people. So you have to learn the skills of how to do that, how to manage that relationship. And then they're commanded to have children. If you have children, like you mentioned before, children can drive you crazy. Not that they're doing anything sinful, it's just that they're not you, and you have to teach them, you have to show them. And then you add into that you've got to build a society. I mean, you got to develop the garden. You're the ruler of everything. And ultimately, then it says, fill the earth. In the Bible, it says, fill the earth. So to me, I interpreted that meaning that it's a big assignment, that eventually they were going to have to leave the garden. That now you could imagine that in a different way, but I'm imagining that they had to go to some other parts of the world, and they had to have more children. They had to build societies, and they had to deal with the world. And I believe that, one of the things that I really love about this book is that it creates thoughts about so many different theological things. Like, I just did a blog post in March about the tree of life. What was the purpose of the tree of life? And it's really something, it's a mind-blowing thing to think that Adam and Eve had in the garden the tree of life that they could have eaten from. And they had the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which they were forbidden from eating from. And that was the only thing that they couldn't eat, was that one tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that's what they ate from. And that created the whole mess that we're in now. Yet the tree of life was there. And so it raises a lot of questions in terms of, okay, Adam and Eve had not sinned. What was the purpose of the tree of life? So I imagine that it was when you look at Revelation, the tree of life reappears. And then there's also a reference in Ezekiel. It talks about, it doesn't call it tree of life, but something similar as far as healing. So in Revelation, it says the tree of life is for the healing of the nation. So in my vision, the tree of life is to heal them so that they don't need to die. And so, but that's a theological question in terms of, was death even a possibility? Because Romans tells us death entered through sin. So there are some things that could be, are definitely open for discussion when you look at my novel in terms of, well, Chuck, how could there even be a risk of death before they sinned? But I think there was. So there's so many, you can discuss the nature of man and woman, the relationship, just a whole bunch of different theological ideas, just like, what did God really expect of them? If they were innocent, what was wrong? Was there something that they were lacking? And what is God trying to do with humanity? And I believe, and I got a gift back in 2004 from a preacher who had passed away as a friend of mine, but his daughter gave me a book of essays by a Swiss theologian, and he theorized that God created humanity innocent, but not holy. So there was a process in which he imagined that God was going to go through with the people, the first Adam and Eve, so that they could grow from innocence to holiness. So I think that's another huge thought-provoking conversation about what that would involve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's so many things that it's just kind of fun to think about. And I've put up a few posts on Instagram and Facebook with different thoughts that are worthy of discussion, I think.
That does make you think, because I promise we blame everything on what happened. And we do question, like, wonder what it would have been like. So it's very interesting that you picked this topic to write about, like creating a new earth and a new characters to depict Adam and Eve, and just what that would have been like. I'm still curious, because right now, the state that we're in, I just really want to go crawl in the cave and just roll the stone until it all passes over, and then I'll peek out and see what's going on up there now, because it's insane.
It is. And like when I first started really thinking about this, I had a problem really imagining it. But as I worked on it, one of the things I thought about was Jesus. Jesus lived as a human being. He came to earth, and he experienced all the emotions that we do, and he experienced all the temptations that we do, and he suffered with it. But I think that when we look at Jesus's behavior and emotions, there was times when he was angry. There was times when he was frustrated.
Now.
And it seems like in the garden, there was times when he was afraid. But he did all that without sin. So my thinking is it must be possible to express human emotions, a wide range of human emotions without sin. So I think that I was just trying to see how I could create a story where that is believable and still have the challenges of different opinions, different understanding of what we should do, and just the challenge of doing it all. Like the garden was a physical place. So I believe they could have got hurt. So they had to learn about the physical world, and they had to master it. And God basically tells us, just like when he after the fall, but even with Cain, after Cain is mad because God does not regard his gift as well as Abel, God says, if you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. So I think God was still encouraging Cain that he could master his anger. He didn't have to give in to sin. And the devil is right there trying to lead him down the path of killing his brother, which he did. But he didn't have to do that. I just think that there are so many situations that are difficult, are challenging for us, but we don't have to sin. There are ways out of it. And that's what I was trying to depict.
We have another comment. Let's see. Elizabeth says, but he was half man and half God, half man so he could experience what we feel. Okay.
What I would say is that he wasn't half man and half God. He was 100% man and 100% God. So I believe that we should view every temptation that he went through as things that, the Bible says he was tempted like we are in every way. So he felt the temptation. So I would just say that rather than half man, he was fully man. He was a human as well as being God, which is a mind-blowing experience in itself, or thought. But yeah.
She says even Paul wrestled with sin.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the characters wrestle with temptation because one of the elements in the idea is that we think of the original temptation of Adam and Eve, and of course they fell for it. But in my story, Satan does not give up. He continues to try to corrupt their minds, and just like he does us, that he tries to tempt us into various things.
And still does. Like the things that we are experiencing today, it's scary. And people are still being just, I don't know, like just seem like pull more to sin, that's more appealing than trying to do the right thing. And I feel like the views are kind of twisted what the right thing actually is. When you actually listen to people speak, it's like, I'm so thrown off of how you say you're this person, but you're okay with these things happening to other human beings. So it's like, I really am so curious to read like how this ends, or does this end? Is this going to roll into another? I'm like your daughter now. What happens next? Because that's
Well,
curious to know, because we all, I feel like, have thought what you're writing about. What would it be like had they not?
right. And I think in that there is another book, and I
Or
mean those are really very
you're
good
gonna keep
questions
us
because
suspenseful.
yes, but there are so many, and again, it's hard for us to even imagine how this could even be.
It's
And I think,
hard.
but I do think that we should try to think of is if God, Adam and Eve could have obeyed God, it would not have been impossible. They made a simple choice and they chose the wrong thing.
They chose the wrong thing. Elizabeth, I was thinking the same thing. I was gonna ask that question, but I'm glad that you did, because I probably would have forgot. So how did you choose the names, and also the name of the earth? How did you choose Adam and Eve? And does your
Well,
replacement names have meaning?
yes, well, the man's name is Solis, Solis. And what I was trying to do is just like Adam was taken from the dust of the ground. What I try to do with Solus is I say that he's taken from the soils of Aramea. So if you just reverse the I and the S, you have a Solus. So that's really how his name came about. And actually, one of the things I try to do is look up etymology of words, and there is a language where Solus does mean soils. So that's the kind of thing I took from that. And Livy's name just comes from the idea that she is the mother of all the living on this planet Aramea. So Livy, mother of all the living, is how I developed that name. And far as the planet's name of Aramea, when I looked at that word, I believe Aramea, I believe it's in Greek, means wilderness. So it was really kind of like it seemed to me an undeveloped place. So really, that's kind of how I approach it. I try to look at the meaning of words, and if I can fit them with the names, I will try to do that. But sometimes I just don't like the name, and I'll come up with something until I really like the name and like the way it sounds and the way it feels, and if it seems to fit. So there's not always a particular meaning of my characters' names, but sometimes there is. I hope that answered the question okay.
It definitely did. She says, got it. I like that.
All right. This is really interesting because I told you before, this is my first live interview. Yes. And so, and I mean, one of the things that I would really hope for, I actually wrote a humorous piece on my February blog post about Valentine's Day. But one of the things I kind of talk about is I want my books to be taught in colleges, and which is really kind of grandiose, I know. But what I really want is people to discuss the ideas and ultimately to be drawn to God. But I think it's so cool to have your listeners asking me questions about these things because there was a lot of things to discuss.
So where is your blog exactly?
If you go to the website that's on your screen, chuckrichardsonstories.com, you'll see a tab there for blog, and usually add something about once a month. And if you go to the website, you'll be able to sign up for my newsletter, and then you'll get the newsletter every month, as well as an article that you will link to the blog post. And if you do that, you will get a free short story called The Birth of Rebellion, which is the prequel to Paradise Unfallen. So one of the things I've also thought about is just, why would an angel who is in heaven that sees God rebel? Why would they risk that? And so that was the what drove the imagining of the short story called The Birth of Rebellion. And your viewers or listeners can get that free and download that by going to my website.
Okay. All right. That's a lot for you to keep up with. Newsletters, blogs, books.
Now I'm trying to do advertising. I started this year doing my first Facebook advertising. And it's interesting, the Facebook advertising I did initially and doing now is to build my newsletter subscribers. And there are people out there that have 15, 20,000 subscribers on their newsletter. And that's great. I was just glad that I have about little over 900. But at the end of the start of 2025, I only had like 50. So it's just a lot. This takes a long time to build up those subscribers. And what I hope to get is I'm trying to find people who are interested in what I write. And my tagline for my website, really for what I do, is truth told through story and scripture. So the blog is mostly nonfiction because it's coming from the Bible, trying to talk about what the Bible has to say. And then my novels are, of course, fiction, but my contention is that I tell the truth in both of those. I tell the truth about God in both conditions.
Okay, so let me try. Let's see here. Let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see that?
No, I just see you.
Okay, let me see. Okay.
Yes, that's my screen, and that's my website. That's a little pop-up that will come up when you go on there. If you want to subscribe, you just can just put your first name and your email address in there, and then you'll be added, and then you'll get an email where you can download. I work with BookFunnel, and they allow you to download a free short story, which is The Birth of Rebellion. As I said, that's the prequel to Paradise Unfallen. So you get some extra information, and you really learn the motivation of Satan, basically.
Now, can you see me signing up right now?
I did. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. So what will happen is you'll receive a series of 4 welcome emails over the course of a couple of weeks. And then after that, you'll primarily get a monthly newsletter, which will come out the middle of the month typically. So that's the one where I told you about the purpose of the tree of life. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. The one below that is most of my writing is not humorous, but the Valentine's Day reality check was an attempt to be humorous. So I think it's kind of funny. And then most of them, as I said, are pretty serious. like
I
that one.
was going to ask you, how did your attempt to be funny? How did that go?
You know what? I got a couple of comments, but it seemed like nobody got the joke. I was like, I'm kidding. But I don't know. You can read it. Like that one right there, ancient
Right here.
warning,
Mhm.
ancient warning for a powerful nation. That's based on a passage from Zechariah that's very serious. It's like, don't oppress these people. Don't oppress the widow, the orphan, the foreigner, um, the weak. And it's like we are just ignoring teaching of Scripture, and that's really what that's about. Trying not to accuse anybody, but to say, are we really paying attention to what God told in the Old Testament about how we were supposed to be?
Yeah.
And
How you
I
treat
think,
people.
huh?
I said, yes, how you're supposed to be and treat people.
How you're supposed to treat people. And the terrible thing about, I think, our world and our society is we, those who are strong are supposed to protect those who are weak. And what we end up doing is taking advantage of those who are weak. And we say, well, if they're weak, we should take things for them. If they're not smart, we should take something from them. If they're dumb enough to believe this, that's fine. But that's not what God says. God says that we're supposed to have mercy on people and we're supposed to help people and not take advantage of them. So, I mean, our whole world is based on, sadly, seems to be based on deception and taking advantage of people.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm trying to, on my blog, like I said, I try to discuss.
Oh, this is a good one. Can we trust modern Bible translations?
Yeah. And see, that one was based on a conversation my wife and we went to basically an outdoor art show here in Louisville. It was really beautiful. It had like 1,000 booths. And at the end of the day, we sat down with two women who, that's not them, but that depicts them. And they were like, their families were telling, because they were dissatisfied with the things that are happening in the country. And one of the women said, can we trust the Bible? They keep changing it. And so I believe that we can trust modern translations and that they're actually very good, but that blog post deals with that and help explain why I say that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to go to the site. I do like have the ability to do some of this stuff, and I don't always do it during my live. And so I said, let's do it today. So
yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. And I hope other people will go there. And there's a lot of information, like I mentioned, there's a lot of information that's free. I mean, you can just, and the short story is free, and it's things that you can enjoy. And it's hopefully will sow some food for thought. And also, one of the things I've just done in the last couple months is I've set up, you can buy these books on Amazon, but you can, if you go back up to the button at that green button, if you buy it from there, you can buy it from my actual store, my own store. And any writer, when you buy it from Amazon, the author makes a whole lot less than if you buy it from the store, and you get the same book. So I've added that some people will just be more comfortable buying it from Amazon or whatever retailer. So I do it both ways. And if you go back and if you click at the top of Paradise Unfallen, that tab up there, yeah, right there. Same thing is you can buy it from my store with the green button, or if you click the blue button, you can buy it from a whole range of other retailers if you prefer. And I put that page on there so people could actually go, and at the bottom of that page, people can actually read an excerpt from chapter 1. So they can really see more about that story.
Awesome. Well, thank you for explaining all of that. Is there anywhere else? Oh, you have a book club too. It looks like it.
I have the book club information for True Status, the first book, and I have
Oh, so you have activity,
I
icebreaker questions, discussion questions. Okay.
yeah, yep.
And what did you say this one was about, the true status?
True status is really about a man who's skeptical about God, and he goes on to he's confronted by an angel. So he has a supernatural experience, and it's really about he discovers a message on his body that he did not put there, that he then has to, he ultimately, for the first time, begins to go and look at what scripture says.
Because of this message on his body.
Yes, he's scared. And he never paid attention before to what God had to say.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes it happens that way.
Yeah.
It might not be a message on your body, but it'd be a message in real life to make you go question stuff. Yeah.
They're both, that book is about spiritual warfare, and so is Paradise Unfallen.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I see what they've done different. Like they put it as a page for me to click on, and I always forget that. I'm like, can you see my screen? Good. So I'm signed up, so I get to go see the blog and the newsletter.
Yeah. And make sure that you check your email and like click to say that you actually approved it.
Okay.
So you get an email that tells you, asks you to do that.
Okay. I will do that. I will do that. I really appreciate you joining us. Did you have anything else? I have a couple more questions for you, but did you have anything else that you would like to share about you, your business, your website, your books?
Well, I have, I'm in Louisville. If there's anybody in the area, I'm going to have a book signing on May 3rd at Newburgh Church of Christ, 4700 East Indian Trail. We would love to have you come out and worship with us at 11, 10 Bible study. And then at 1 o'clock, we'll have the signing. So if anybody's in the area, that would be great if you could come. And I'll have that posted on my Facebook or Instagram. And then on Instagram, I'm Chuck Richardson Writer. And then on Facebook, I'm at Chuck Richardson Stories. So people can find my business both of those places.
Awesome. Awesome. Whew. Okay, so we're going to take us a quick commercial break and be right back. So y'all don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hang tight, my sunshine. Conversations with Celena. We'll be right back. Hey, sunshine. All right. So what I want to say before we get to our final few questions, just want to remind you that we are having our celebration April 25th in New Orleans, Louisiana. It is Cheers to 6 years for Conversations with Celena. And then we're going to have a mini session of I Owe Her and a light lunch. So please be sure to go sign up at selenathomas.net. And then we just want to really thank the people who continuously show up for us, to support us. So I want to say thank you to everyone, because I know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for y'all. So I already know that. And I think y'all know that. I think y'all know that too. But we continue to show up, not just me. And I just could not do it without the love and the support of each and every one of you. And you know who you are. For this particular event that's coming up, I do want to take a moment to say thank you to the sponsors and supporters. It is going to be the Taste of Juanita Seasoning, Queen S Jam, Apex Counseling, LP Dillon Designs, The Blood Blocked It, TL Media, and 4C and Company. So if you would like to be a sponsor, if you would like to be a sponsor of a bag for the event, also come join us. You will get a shout out. You're going to be on the cards on the table. We're going to talk about you. We're going to promote you, and we just going to love on you. And if you show up for Sunshine, you know I love to give a shout out. So support is you showing up for Sunshine. That's how I feel. You liking a post, that's support. You sharing a video, a post, whatever it is, that is also support. So I don't want you to think, well, I'm not able to do this, but you can do that. So find your place, find something that you can do to help us to continue to spread this message, to share testimonies, to share people's stories, their books, their businesses. And I definitely want to continue to share my story of being a victim, then a survivor, and now a conqueror of physical, sexual abuse, including incest, including rape. And so I'm just going to keep going one step, one day at a time. So thank you all again. And we're going to get right on back to Mr. Richardson and have a few questions for him. All right, sir. I'm glad I could give you a little bit of a break.
I needed it.
So yes, I normally, I know I say I don't have questions, but these are some things that I really like to ask each guest now. I used to not do it, but when I first started, I had this question that I said, what would you tell your younger self? So that's one thing that I'm always curious about from our guests. Like, if you could tell young Chuck anything, what would you tell the younger version of yourself?
Well, if I went back to like when I was coming out of high school, I don't actually regret the decisions that I made, but at the same time, my best subject, I was good at all my subjects, really. And I love school, but I ended up going to mechanical engineering because I was good at math and science. But really my favorite subject was English. And on the one hand, I'm glad the life I've had and been able to provide for my family through being an engineer. But I think I might have said, go after something related to train English. And one of the benefits, I think, is a lot of people who went that way would have read a lot more things than I've read. And I'm trying to do that now. So that could have been, my true love was not engineering. My true love was something related with English and writing. So I might have said, really seriously consider that.
Mm-hmm.
For my older, younger self, I think I would have just said, learn how to write a novel before you start writing it. And but at the same time, everybody learns differently. I'm glad I had the experience, but it took me 5 years to write the first book and only a year to write the second book.
Mm-hmm.
And now it took a long time of editing and getting the second book ready. But if I had taken more time up front, I could have saved some effort with the first book. However, I almost nothing was lost. It was just know that there's a lot more to learn than you think. It's not easy. I mean, that's the thing, is you think that we can just suddenly know how to write a book, whereas nothing else, becoming a doctor, becoming a therapist, all those things take years and years of effort and training. And learning how to write a novel takes years and years. It's really a lifetime thing. So it's like, younger Chuck, take some time to figure out how to write a novel before you try to write one.
That's all good. And like you said, there is nothing wasted. And I definitely want the audience to take that nugget from you, because even though it may have taken you longer, nothing is wasted. And you've learned a lesson to help the next person coming behind to say, okay, if you want to save yourself some time, this is how you go about it. But most of us don't listen. We go through it the hard way anyway, even though someone else has already went through that storm for us. We just have to learn by bumping our own head.
Yes. Now, one thing, that reminded me of something. I just completed a novel called A Prayer for Owen Meany. And that was something that was recommended to me by a fellow writer and also a man who subscribes to my newsletter, because he said that one of my characters reminded him of that story. And that's a long book. It's like over 600 pages. But the idea of nothing being wasted, that book really, and the way it ends, it drives home the fact that every experience that you have, even though you don't realize it, is God is using it to prepare you for what you're going to need to do. And I just think that what you mentioned reminded me of that. And that was one of the messages from that book. And the way that book ends is just so good. It brings it all together in an amazingly effective way. So that's another thing, as a writer and a novelist, I'm trying to learn from other writers and what they've done. And that's another key lesson, is you got to keep reading other stuff, particularly in your genre.
Right. I think I had, let me see. I think I had a post in my email. Let's see. It said, Ruth 4:15, he will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. God restores legacy and hope. Like Naomi, he can turn your mourning into joy and give your story a new ending.
Mm-hmm.
And the prayer says, God of new beginnings, renew my life and restore every joy, purpose, and promise I thought was gone forever. So I feel like that kind of goes in with it, because, sometimes we feel like we've gotten too old or this or that. And it's like, no, like God will restore and renew you and will use every experience that you went through for your good. So nothing is wasted.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell myself regarding my career choices, that it all worked out very well ultimately. And God is, I think it's good for us to really realize that God is working to draw everybody to him. And we should pay attention to that.
Yep, I agree. We should. And then not just pay attention, but
respond.
Respond. Respond. There you go. So then my very last question is, if our listeners could take away one thing, because we did give them a lot of information today. So if you had one takeaway that you would want the audience to take away from today's message, what would that one takeaway be?
That God is working in our lives, and he is using our experiences to help us come to him. I think, and that's ultimately, and we have opposition. There is spiritual forces of evil that are opposing that. So I think knowing that God is working, whether you believe in Christ or not, he is real. God is working on trying to draw us all to Christ. And we have spiritual opposition that is trying to deceive us and keep us from God. And so that's, like I said before, all my writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, is trying to point us to God and knowing more about him and being saved.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I guess you feel like I always got something to say, but when you said whether you believe in God or not, I think for the past few years, I have ran into more people that say they do not believe, but most of them at one point did. So it's not like their entire life they were a non-believer. They used to believe, and then I'm going to say the majority of them pray for something specific. It didn't work out in their favor, more than likely someone not to die at that time. Yeah. And so then it's just like, God didn't listen to me.
God didn't come through.
He didn't come through for me. Yeah.
One of the things I would say, I'm sorry for that, but in this fallen world, we're all going to die. And we're all going to die. And it's going to be sad for those, our loved ones that are left behind. But one of the things I would say, as far as the existence of God, I read a book a few months ago called, if we've got time, I can briefly go over this, but
no, go ahead.
It's called Signature in the Cell. And it was just a fascinating book. It's written by a scientist, a guy who's like some type of, I don't know if it's biologist, but some high level doctorate in sciences and medicine and that type of thing, biology. And he talks about the discovery of DNA. And just think about the illustration as if you found a message written on a piece of paper, a sentence, says, conversations with Celena, written someplace. Would you assume that an intelligent a person with intelligence wrote that? You would have to, right? You wouldn't say that happened randomly. You know what I mean? If you see a sign written that says conversations with Celena, somebody with a thought process wrote it, right? A very simple phrase. So the point of this, this is like a 600-page book, but the point of
600 pages, Mr.
Well, I don't normally read, but these last two books have been over 600 pages.
Good gracious!
But what the point of that book is that the author makes the point. If you look at our DNA, which provides the instructions of how a living cell can live and perform the functions, it's actually a language that is written in our DNA. In every cell, there is a very complex message that's far more complex than conversations with Celena. So the point is, when people go back to the origin of life, there was a time in this world where the world existed, but there was nothing living. So somehow we went from non-living things to the first living thing. And the point of this book is the first living thing required these instructions. So how could that happen? There had to be an intelligence before those combination of materials came together to form life. And the idea is that there's a detailed instruction in even a single cell organism. And the point of that book is just to show how the best explanation for how could you have written information, specified written information on how the cell is going to live if you didn't have intelligence before the first living physical thing. And that points to God. God is the only thing that's immaterial and living. So that mind, the point is that mind wrote the instructions on that cell. So if we know intuitively that if you see a message written on the wall that makes sense, that someone with a mind wrote it, why can't we see that in our own bodies, every cell has a message of instructions on how that cell is to live, and they will define that information as a certain type of language. And it's basically the arrangement of proteins in the DNA that give the instructions on how all the function of the cell happen. And when I think about that, there's no way that happened randomly. And intelligence had to put that writing in there.
What do they call the Big Bang?
Well, I would say we're going to go on. We can go on forever, but just think about this, because I know, like, my minister was a good friend. He has a problem with the word Big Bang because it signifies to him kind of like an explosion disorder. But what I think of is the reality that there was a time in the past hundreds of years where people believed that the universe had existed forever, okay? That it was eternal. But the idea that the scientists really think now is that there was a beginning, and they call that the Big Bang. And what I think of is the Bible says, in the beginning, God did this. So when we went from God, that the universe always existed, to believing there was a beginning, that got more biblical. We were more biblical when we believed there was a big bang where everything started. The way I view it is, if there was a big bang, God caused it. And it wasn't just an explosion, it was a decision where God said, we're creating the universe and we want it to expand. So the idea of Big Bang, a lot of times Christians don't like that idea, but I think that it makes sense because it's consistent with where in Genesis it says, in the beginning, God created. And so there was a time, like I said, there was a time when people thought the universe always existed. There was no creation. But we know now, scientists believe there was a beginning. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So every time you say something, it might trigger something.
No. This has been good. And Elizabeth said too, I just want to say, put that up because I never got a chance to put that up. She said, great session. So this is good.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth.
There's so much, I think, if we look at things, if we really look honestly, and it's really difficult to say we don't believe that there is a God. It's evidence all around us that there is a God. How could we have such an orderly world? Like I said, living things have written instructions on their cells that tell them how to keep living, how to function. Written things, specified information like that doesn't happen by itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just makes me sad that so many people just, I don't know, they argue and it's this way or no way, and my way is the right way. And it's hard to have a conversation sometimes with people who don't agree with your way of thinking, versus being open to at least hearing what the person has to say, and you all have a conversation, because you definitely learn from people when you're able to be quiet and listen. I mean, because there's history that's been written that if we take the time to read, we can learn more. And I think that's what we do now. We do more scrolling than we do reading. And so we just base what we move forward with on what social media says a lot of times versus what the word says. And so it just kind of makes me sad. I stay away from the news. I can't. My mental health just can't take all of that.
It's really hard. It's really hard I know what you mean, because it's hard to want to know about all the stuff that's is happening to people. I mean, I think it's heartbreaking to see parents that are unable to protect their children. They can't feed them. They can't protect them from the wars. And all these people are living in, I think about, I look at some of these places that get blown up, like whether it's, Gaza or Israel or Iran or Ukraine, and you see the beautiful architecture reduced to rubble. And you see people who have moved. I love my house, and thinking about it getting blown up and having to, walk hundreds of miles to another place to live in a tent. That's heartbreaking. And
so heartbreaking.
There's so much cruelty, and it's unbelievable how anybody could stand it. But
I wish we could just love, just unconditional love, just love people. And I don't know, I tried to say that the other day, and I cannot remember what that guy said to me, but it's almost like you gotta have one in order to have the other one or whatever. And I'm just like, why can't we just take the space that we have, live in it, and just live until we pass away? Why? Or I don't know. Like I said, it just gets to be frustrating. And then people just come back with a comeback. They just come back to come back. And all you're trying to do is promote positive, peaceful situations and environments. And I think most of us, if we could, that's what we would want. That's what we promote. And
I
so
think, yeah, I think part of it is that we have an enemy of humanity. Now, I think people don't always think about that, but the wars we have ultimately are not in any human being's interest. I believe that we have a spiritual enemy who is happy for us to destroy all of ourselves. And to me, the things that we see people doing are out of fear and deception. And the deceiver is Satan. And I think, people may not believe that Satan is real, but I just think, to me, when I look at our world, the things that we do to people are not in anybody's interest. Ultimately, we don't, I mean, not really. It's just that because of fear and because of deception, people think they're in their interest and they want to retain power. But I think ultimately it's a spiritual deception.
yeah. I'm sorry. We was ending on a positive note, and somehow, because that will take you down a different path and me down a different path. But you are correct, and we gonna go back to what Lil Chuck would have done and what Lil Sunshine would have done. So I'm gonna add my little take on there. I think if I could go back and do something different, instead of going to school for business, I probably would have went for, I want to say counseling, but counseling has so many limits. It limits you from what you can do with your clients and customers and stuff like that. So I don't want that. Like, I don't want that stuff to hold me bound, but it would be in that arena. So I would want to do something, but I wouldn't want to be tied. So I know, like, life coaching, it gives you more freedom with the people that you service. And so that's what I would probably do versus sitting in the classroom trying to absorb stuff that I've never used since I got out of school. Like, some of the stuff I never even used. I just have a bill for it and a book for it. But but I think that's what I would do. And I would definitely tell little Celena that it's not your fault and that things are going to work out. I used to have a friend that he used to always tell me, you're going to be okay. And I'd be like, you just always say that. You get on my nerves telling me that, because I just be venting about whatever I was going through in life at that time. And he was just like, you're going to be okay. And I just could not see it for anything, because when you're in the storm, it's like you cannot see the sunshine and the rainbows. But if you just stay the course and stick with it and be faithful and hopeful, it's going to work out. Like, it's going to work out. And it may not be always the way that we think that it's going to work out, but most of the time it's going to be better than what we even thought. So I think that's what you didn't ask me what would I tell little Celena, but I'm volunteering that information.
I was thinking it.
Yes. I think
No.
that's what I would tell little Sunshine. Don't worry about it, girl. It's gonna be okay. And that you don't need validation from other people. Like, I think we spend too much time trying to be accepted by certain people, trying to be loved by certain people and validated by those people. And at the end of the day, we just gotta please God, love people and do what we're supposed to do, and love the ones that don't love us back. Like, pray for them. I promise you, my heart is completely different toward the people who did me wrong and hurt me and stuff. And it's because I prayed for them. Like, it wasn't easy, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, and your heart does soften toward them. And so that's the beauty in it.
That is really good. I think it's hard for us. I think one of the things I was thinking is, ultimately we have to trust that God is there and that God is working for our good, and that He is good, and that He is going to come out on top. And ultimately, there's going to be, there's going to be justice, but there's also going to be forgiveness. And that's one of the things that First Thessalonians, I think it is, that talks about God is going to come back taking vengeance on those who don't know Christ. And that's that's like a very negative thing. But ultimately, the whole reason that Jesus died was so that we could be saved from the wrath of God. People often don't think about that's something to be afraid of, but God doesn't want anybody to happen to them, which is why Christ, we're celebrating Easter. I mean, Christ died a horrible death on Good Friday, a terrible death, a disgraceful death, a humiliating death. But he did that to take the punishment that we deserve. And I think we ultimately have to force ourselves as much as possible to believe that God is good. What is the question?
So, Evelyn, I'm sorry. I don't even know at what point you put this up. I was over here in my feelings talking about all this stuff. But her question is, what would you both say is the biggest piece of advice you'd give / tell someone in their 20s going through life?
Really? I actually was telling Celena before we came on the air that I taught a class this morning on Zoom on Proverbs 7. And if you look at the first 4 verses of Proverbs 7, it says, treasure up the wisdom that is being taught, which is really saying treasure the wisdom of God in the scriptures. And this particular proverb is specifically, I title it the story of seduction. And it's really about a young man, going out in the night and being enticed. Yet, I think when you look at the first 4 verses of that passage, it's saying, treasure the word of God, learn it, remember it, meditate on it, and believe it, take it seriously. So I would say that anybody that's in that particular thing is really geared toward a young person. But I think that for any person, young as well as old, it is really to take to heart the word of God and take it seriously, actually value it. And don't just think about, oh, that's something that happened. Those people lived 3,500 years ago and they don't know what it's like today. But when you start reading it, you start seeing that those people are just the same human beings as we are. And if we can take that advice seriously, it's going to save us so much heartache.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one Proverbs. I mean, the whole Bible is full of things like that. But as I said, I just taught that class today. Proverbs 7 is a great lesson, written by Solomon, that everyone, young or old, should take to heart. I don't know. What would you say, Celena? She's asking for both of us.
I know. So, oh my goodness. So yes, I'm going to say, for me, it's just for me, like I was saying, you try to get other people's validation in life and love in life. And sometimes it takes you down the wrong path because you're seeking for the wrong things in life and from life. And so, and it gets you all off course, and you go through things that, yes, God can use those things for your good, but sometimes because of all of that noise and because of all of the feeling when you're young, and you tend to people please for different reasons. Not everybody, but there are situations that create people pleasers instead of trying to please God and do what God wants us to do. So I'm just going to say, love yourself. Learn how God loves you and love yourself, and you're going to love other people. And when you love yourself the way that you're supposed to, the way that God wants you to see yourself and love yourself and treat yourself and cherish yourself, you're not going to fall to the victim, prey to what the world is trying to do to you, because you're not going to be easily convinced to go down that path. You're going to be able to stand strong and say, you know what? you may not see my value, but I see my value. You may not think I'm smart enough to go to college, but I believe that I'm smart enough to go to college. You may not think that I deserve this business or be successful or whatever, but God does not see me that way. And so for me, that's what had me all messed up, because what I went through had me not seeing my value. How people treated me had me feeling like I wasn't worth anything and I didn't deserve. And I was just this little, I'm going to say heavy set. That's not the word that they use, because, you know, people are nasty, but I'm just this little heavy set, damaged, used up little girl, individual, young adult that no one cared about. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't care about her either. And so it puts you in a place and in a mindset to be with people that you shouldn't be with, to try to please people that don't matter, you know? And so I said a whole lot just to say, love God, love yourself, and you're going to love people, and you're going to look in the mirror, and you're just not going to fall for the lies of the enemy. And that's going to change the whole trajectory of your life.
Of your whole life. And it's you know, it's really good. I mean, to reach that conclusion. And I was thinking, as you said, that in terms of writing, you know, a lot of the writing gurus say your character has to believe a lie in the beginning. And like you said, you accepted the lie. And at the end, you said, I'm not going to accept that lie anymore. And that's really the whole structure of some novels, is how the character goes from one to the other. And it'd be great if we were never taught the lie.
If we never believed the lie. So Evelyn, at 20, don't believe the lie. Like, because that's my whole, if I could get someone not to believe the lie in their 20s and they don't have to be 50, listen, God be able to say, well done. If don't believe the lie, so that I can get the well done, my good and faithful servant at the end, because that is my purpose and goal, because I lived so long in the shadow and the cloud and the darkness of that lie.
Yep.
That I didn't have any value, and that I had just been used and abused and discarded.
That sounds like a memoir or a autobiography right there, ready to be developed.
All right, Miss Ramona. Miss Ramona sent me some writing prompts, and then I say, I know she's like, this girl, she could just probably, because she sent it to me already. And I'm like, Miss Ramona, can you send it to me one more time, please? And then she's like, Sunshine, I can't find it. So I guess Sunshine on her own now, she got to figure it out. But Miss Ramona has made it clear that she is willing to help me get that going.
You know, one of the things that I listen to a lot of fiction advice, but there is a blog called Jane Friedman blog. Jane Friedman is really big in writing and the whole industry of the business of it, but she also has a blog. I think she has things on memoir, where you're writing about some aspect of your life. Like an autobiography is the whole life, but a memoir could just be some aspect of it and they have, you know, she has some things on there that could give you some advice and some ideas of how you might approach your own story.
What's her name? Let me get my notebook.
Her name is Jane Friedman. Friedman. And she has a blog, and she has a lot. I mean, she's got a blog where you can pay a few dollars, but also she's got a lot of free information on there. It's Jane Friedman blog, I think .com. And like if you Google it, it'll probably come up. She's a pretty Jane Friedman blog, and she has a lot of stuff about the business of writing. But I think you'd find something on there about how to write a memoir, you know, how to write your story.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like especially if you're not the person that has journal, because I know people who have bins of journals, and so they probably have their books already written. Me, on the other hand, I was afraid to write. I was afraid to write. I still get writer's block, and my mind will freeze up. Writer's block. People say, well, do a video. It's like my mind, no, I didn't click record. It does the same, it has the same effect as if I picked up the pen to go write. So I've tried voice memo, I've tried video, I've tried writing, and just something just tries to keep me from getting it done. And so I think doing a memoir versus trying to write from beginning to end, because it's a lot of things that I don't remember because of trauma, that memoir would probably be the best way to get started. And I know I need to. It keeps coming back to me that I need to do it, need to do it, need to do it. It's just doing it. I need to clear my space first so I can clear my mind. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, how to help you take that next step of how you do it. But like for me, so far I haven't gotten writer's block, but what happens to me is I get images of a story or of scenes. I actually read a book by a award-winning writer, and what he said is you got to have like 80 to 100 scenes that are as crazy as possible, and you get them down, and then after a while you kind of begin arranging them into the story you want to tell. So I don't know if that's
so many books, sir.
Huh?
I said, you've read so many books and can remember. I read this book by this author and it said this, and I read this book by that author.
I don't actually remember all their names, but I have like my Kindle and I can look back and say, who said that? But that's the thing, is that, and I kind of wish that I had been reading this stuff since my 20s, because I'm behind. Like, it's amazing when you listen to some of these guys that have been at this for 40 or 50 years, how much they know.
Yeah.
And how they go back to, Aristotle, and they've read all the writings, because there's a lot to learn. But we don't have to be overwhelmed. We can just start and learn what we can learn now.
Just start. That's it. Yeah.
And just realize, as long as you like to read, I think that it's a terrible thing if somebody doesn't like to read. You got to have that desire to learn, and hopefully it'll be fun. Like there's so much more for me to learn about writing that it'll take me the rest of my life. But the good thing is I published my first novel when I was 65. And my second one's coming out when I'm 68.
You great. So see, that's what I'm saying. When you come and share your testimony, it just opens up the door for other people, because I'll be 54 next Friday. And so you're like, gosh, I'm 54, just getting started. But your testimony right now is 65 at your first novel. And so it's never too old. As long as you got breath in your body, you can wake up and you can do something different today than what you did yesterday. And it just takes the start. That's it.
Exactly. If you read my February blog post, I say that this series I'm working on has got, I think, at least 2 more books after this. And I figured it'll take me until I'm almost 80 to get there. So
well, it's not going to take you that long now, because now you know how to, you got the hang of it now. Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much. How was your first experience doing a live?
It was great. I really appreciate you, and thank you for having me on your show. You've been great. You made it easy, and I hope it all comes out all right.
Oh, listen, there's no editing over here, so it is what it is. We just straight.
That's it. Now there's another question up there.
Yes, so she must have not been on when we first started. She said, what are your novels about? And I also want to say, I love the phrase you both just said, just start.
Okay.
Yes.
My novels are really about, the first one is about a man who's skeptical about God. And ultimately, it's a story of spiritual warfare with him. Of course, it's set in modern times. The second book is really also about spiritual warfare, but it imagines a world where Adam and Eve did not sin, and it's based on a twin Earth where the first people did not sin, but they still had to do and meet all the challenges that God gave them in Genesis 1, like be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over all the animals and all of creation. So it's an adventure. That's an adventure story, but both my stories are ultimately about the battle between good and evil. So they're about spiritual warfare and how Satan's always out to trick us.
And we ain't falling for the trick anymore.
Amen.
We're not falling for the trick anymore.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you again. I want you to hang back for just 1 second, and I'm going to close out. Thank you all so much. I will see you in New Orleans, April 25th. And until next time, which is tonight at 7 o'clock Central, keep it smiling, sunshine. Mwah.
All right.